Hello and welcome to the Love Reading Lit Fest. We are here today with the author Stephanie Burgis, who is joining us from Wales, I believe at the moment, Steph. Hi.
That's right. Hi.
Hi there. And we are joined by one of our reading ambassadors, Frankie, who is joining us here today. Frankie is 9. She has very much enjoyed Steph's new book called The Raven Heir and is here to ask some questions about the book today. Before we dive in, I'll just give you a little bit more information about Steph. So Steph lives in Wales with her husband, their 2 sons and their tabby cat, surrounded by mountains and castles. So we see where some of the inspiration from this book comes from. She writes fun middle grade fantasy adventures, most recently, The Dragon with a Chocolate Heart trilogy and the new book, The Raven Heir. Love reading for kids called The Raven Heir, a riotous romp of an adventure story, replete with old world atmosphere and more mystery, magic, and quest-driven action that you can quiver a medieval sword at. It is perfect for kids aged 9+. It's published by Bloomsbury Children's Books and it's out now. And we are delighted about that. So welcome, Steph. Welcome, Frankie. I'll now hand over to you to ask your questions.
Wonderful.
Okay. At the beginning of your story, the triplets live in an enchanted castle with their mother and their older brother Connell. They have no idea what adventure is about to happen because they have been so many secrets until one day they have visitors and the adventure begins. How do you decide where to start your stories?
I think it's a great idea to start your story just as things are about to change, because that makes a really interesting point for the characters and it's also quite fun to leap in as a writer and say, well, you think you know what's going on, but suddenly, whew, everything is about to flip. And that definitely happens, in The Raven Heir, where Cordelia thinks she knows exactly what's going on and she's completely wrong.
I love the story of Cordelia and her fellow triplets, Rosalind and Giles, and their bond growing. Do you have any brothers or sisters that helped you write about them?
I do. I have 2 younger brothers, and we were really close. Well, all through our childhood, and we still are really close now, even though we live in different countries now. And I would say, like Cordelia and her triplets, we are definitely capable of arguing over things. But also, they're always the ones who I know will always have my back. And I would say, during this past year of the pandemic, we had a couple of scary times because our family got COVID a couple of times. And the times when I would be really scared, the first person I would want to reach out to was one of my brothers. And that's a real foundation for my life, knowing I can always reach out to them no matter what. And that was what founded the relationship for Cordelia and her triplets.
Do you agree with that, Frankie? Is that what you're like with your brother?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
This story reminded me of bits of so many other brilliant fairy tales. It started with Cordelia feeling trapped in the tower bedroom, which reminded me of Rapunzel, through to the wicked grandmother in the cottage who tricks them, all right through to the search for the crown, reminding me of The Sword and the Stone. What was your inspiration for this tale?
Well, I love those associations you've drawn. And to be honest, I never thought through those so clearly. And I love those connections because they make total sense. I would say when I write in this series and also in my last series, The Dragon with the Chocolate Heart series, my goal has been to write a fairy tale-like experience without exactly copying just one particular fairy tale from beginning to end.
Yeah.
And so I'm really happy that that's what came across for you, was that feeling of, of a fairy tale-like magical adventure.
Yeah. This raven crown is what started the whole adventure in the first place. The crown connected to the ruler of the land and the kingdom. 30 years ago, it cracked and fell off the king's head. No one since had managed to wear it. It's waiting hidden in the mountains to be found and mended by its true owner. It won't give anything away. I won't give anything away, but the new owner cares about their world. Is this book also about us taking care of our environment?
Absolutely. I think that you've seen right through to one of the biggest messages in here, because I would say a few different things worked into that in my head as I was writing, because I knew I was going to write a story about a sort of chosen king or queen. And of course, in the Middle Ages, people did have a really strong idea of, of the rightful king, or, and we don't have that so much now anymore. And I was thinking, what would actually make someone the rightful king or queen? What would actually be something that made them worthy, to a modern perspective of being the chosen one for the crown? And I thought, actually caring about the land and establishing a real harmony between people and their environment. And that's something that is so important for us right now with climate change and with the challenges that we face. And also, I would say, although the story, I hope, should stand on its own, there is certainly a deeper level where the children are being challenged. They have to make a decision of whether to run away and hide from all the problems in their world, or whether to actually try to face them and try to help make things better. And that's a decision that we all have to make, honestly, every day.
Definitely. I love stories about magic, and this story is about magic, mystery, and loads of adventure. The characters are also brave, and they go on the quest to save their mother and brother. They all have different skills, though, don't they? How do you decide what those would be?
Well, I wanted each of them to have their own passions and their own really distinct strengths and goals. And I wanted them to be different enough that they wouldn't understand each other always, much like I sometimes haven't with my brothers and vice versa. But also skills that can really complement each other when they're all working together. And I would say the one change I made as I was writing, when I first started writing, I started writing the first scene, and I hadn't really planned ahead, because I never plan ahead when I'm writing. I just sort of find out how the story's going. But when I first started writing the first scene, it was almost like it is now. So Cordelia was sitting in her tower, and one of her siblings was sword fighting, and one of her siblings was up in the tower, but it was the other ones.
Okay.
And it wasn't working for me, and I didn't know why it wasn't working. And then as soon as I flipped them around, so now Rosalind is the one who wants to be a knight and Giles is the one who wants to be a bard, suddenly their characters clicked in my head and they felt right. And I think it was also partly because it had felt a little bit too cliched in my first version. I wanted to do something interesting and something a little bit different.
Yeah. Cordelia is definitely my favorite character. She can shapeshift into any animal she wants, which is very useful. If you had Cordelia's powers, what animal would you most likely want to turn into?
That is such a good question, and my answer changes all the time. But I think I always go back and forth between a cat and something with wings, because I would love to be able to fly. But on the other hand, I love cats. I love their grace and their agility. And also, it's just a nice life, basically. I think today I'm feeling quite comfortable. So I'd like to be a cat, so I can just, sort of nap in the sunlight.
Okay.
Did you have a think about what you if you could shapeshift?
I was thinking I wanted to be a ladybird, because I could then fly, but I could also stay on land, and everyone loves ladybirds, so it'd be a really fun adventure.
I would like that. And you're the first person who said ladybird, so that's really interesting.
Yeah.
I want to be an author when I grow up. What advice would you give someone who wants to be a writer?
I would say read absolutely as much as you can, and as many different genres and styles as you can to give yourself, you don't want to read just one thing and end up, because what makes things interesting is to be able to mix lots of different ideas together. And don't let anyone tell, I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because I'm now going to say, don't let anyone tell you what to read. So you'll have to put those pieces of advice together with a grain of salt, but follow your own interests with reading and read as much as you can. I would also say, if you're ever able to find friends who are willing to read what you write and give you good feedback, which isn't just, that doesn't work. That's not actually good feedback. What you want is someone who can tell you, this I really like, this part didn't make sense. You want to hear the good and the bad, both of them together in a positive way that makes you want to keep writing. So anytime you can trade critiques with other friends, find anyone else who will read what you write and then work to make it better, I would say that's the most important thing you can do.
Okay.
Stephanie, I was just thinking about something I read this morning actually about how young you were when you first wanted to become an author. Would you mind sharing that with us? Because I thought that was just lovely.
Oh, yeah. Well, I started reading, very early. I was an obsessive reader. And then for some reason, I didn't really understand that real people had written those books when I was very little. And I finally worked out that not only had the books I read been written by people, but some people did that as their job. And I thought that blew my mind. So I still remember I was riding in the car with my mom and I was 7 years old. And I said, I found something I like even better than reading. And she's like, really? Because that was so shocking. And I said, yeah, it's right. I want to be a writer. I'm going to be a writer when I grow up. And my mom said, oh, God. She was horrified because she's very loving and very practical. And, it's not the safest possible job to have. But she's now extremely supportive. And yes, I just had a discussion with her yesterday about how I still haven't yet dedicated a book just to her. So I still need to do that very soon.
Lovely. And so when you wrote your first, how old were you when you wrote your first book and had it published?
Well, those are two different questions because my first book I ever wrote, I was 13. And that did not get published for very good reasons. And I would say I averaged about one book a year from the time I was 13. And I sold my first book when I was 31. So that's a lot of books in the middle. But I was learning something every single time. The books got better and better. And it's just that stubborn perseverance that you need to build if you want a career as an author.
So where do you actually write most of your books, and where do you like to write?
Well, when it's good weather, where I really like to write is in my garden. We've got a picnic table out there and some comfortable chairs. And I love sitting out there and writing surrounded by the trees and the birds. And it's perfect. When the weather is not so great, and, I live in Wales, so it does rain quite often, then I usually just write snuggled up in bed. It's very cozy. Quite often my cat is lying on my chest and purring as I write, which is really nice. Before the pandemic, I used to do writing in coffee shops. I used to like doing that. And that's something, we can't yet do in Wales. Right? So
hopefully not far away, Steph, hopefully not far away. Listen, that is a lovely juncture with which to hand over to you, if you wouldn't mind. We would love to hear you reading some of the Raven Heir today. So we're going to hand over to you, if that's all right. You can share a few pages with us.
Of course. So this is from the Raven Heir, and I'm just going to read you the first couple of pages. And I'm going to show you the really cute little illustration too. I love the chapter headers.
They're gorgeous, aren't they? They're absolutely gorgeous.
They really are. So chapter 1. Beyond the castle's moat, the deep, dark forest was shot through with trails of sunlight tracing golden paths of possibility. Robins sang from hidden branches while swifts dived and darted over the sun-dappled water. They were all wild with the first taste of summer, and so was the dark-haired girl who sat, bare feet dangling against stone, on the windowsill of her tower bedroom, watching them fly. Inside the castle, her mother and her older brother Connell were busy in the herbarium as usual, casting stinking enchantments to protect their home against the world. Cordelia's triplet sister Rosalind was loudly bashful, using the latest long stick that she had adopted as a sword. Their triplet brother Giles strummed a lute soulfully in his tower bedroom high above, windows left open to spread his endless wailing song through the warm air. But outside the castle, the birds were free, and so could Cordelia be, if only... No, catching herself leaning forward, she forced herself to stop before wings could sprout from her back. She couldn't turn bird and fly out into the sunshine. Not today. She'd promised Mother never to do it again without Connell's supervision. Even though that was a ridiculous rule, it meant only going out once or twice a week when she wanted to fly free every day. They lived all alone in the center of an enchanted forest. Who could possibly hurt her among the trees, and why would they want to? But those were questions that Mother would never answer, like everything else about their family's past. And the last time Cordelia had given in to temptation and flown free on her own for one delicious, stolen afternoon, Mother had cast a cloud of dark smoke to wrap tightly around her window for an entire week in punishment. So Cordelia only sighed and tipped her head back now to soak in the gorgeous warmth of the sunshine on her face and the vast, familiar murmuring of the deep forest around her, until harsh voices called out suddenly in the distance.
Oh, lovely. It brings a new meaning to the word grounding, doesn't it? That's quite a grounding. Love it. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much, Steph, for sharing that with us. Back to you, Frankie. I think you've got a couple more questions, haven't you?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this book. Me and my mum read it together and we both adored it, but it went too quickly. We really hope you'll write more stories about these books.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. Yes, I am actually working on the edits for book 2, which is called The Raven Throne. Because there's plenty of danger and adventure even after one of the triplets takes the throne.
Oh, how exciting. And do we know yet when that will be published, Steph? No?
No, I'd love to say 2022, but I can't promise it yet.
Oh, that's so exciting. It's just, I thought the relationship between the 3 children and how it grew, as Frankie mentioned before, was just lovely. And, you know, I think it was calling out for more. So we're very pleased to hear that. That's great. Great. We look forward to it.
So are there any other stories that you want to write? I really like finding new authors and following their inspiration for their books.
You know, I have so many different ideas, and the difficulty is always narrowing down which one to write next. You know, before I wrote the Raven Heir, you know, I'd done the Dragon with the Chocolate Heart books, and then I actually proposed a different book, which my editors, they actually challenged me to write because they said they liked the idea that I'd sent them for the other option, but it was a little bit too much like the Dragon with the Chocolate Heart books. And they wanted me to sort of think bigger and, you know, try something really different and stretch myself, which is exciting.
Yeah.
So, which is why, you know, the Dragon with the Chocolate Heart books are a little bit lighter and cozier. And this one is bigger and more epic. And so I still don't know which way I'll be going after the Raven Throne, but it's always fun to write lots of different things and get to explore lots of different kinds of stories.
Yeah, definitely. What would be really lovely, because I'm sure that some of the children and maybe the adults watching this event won't really understand about, once you've written a book, that's great, but there's still so much to be done, isn't there, in terms of the illustrations, the editor and what role they play. It would be great if you wouldn't mind sharing with us maybe how everyone pulls together once you've created your book, your story.
Yeah, so it takes me about 8 or 9 months to write the first draft of a book. And then I send it to my editors, and this is now that I have editors. When you're first trying to sell a book, that's totally different. But now that I'm working with a specific publishing house and I have contracts, I send the book to my editor, and she will write back with a long edit letter. And when you first start publishing, it can be quite intimidating. Yeah, I would say it never gets easy, but you get the long edit letter that says, like I was saying about feedback earlier, it'll say, I like this and this and this. This is really not working. And I reshape the story and I try to make everything work better, be smoother. And at that point, I might be making quite big changes. For instance, in the first draft of the Raven Heir, my editor said she didn't think the character of Connell was working. She couldn't quite imagine him. And she thought maybe I could just cut him out, which I didn't want to do. But I had to work really hard in that draft to fill him out instead and make him really work, because he was important to me and he mattered to me, but I hadn't expressed that on the page before. So you make these big changes in the first edits. And then once the editor decides that the book is basically working and it's basically right, then it goes to line edits, which are for little changes, for all the sentence level things like, oh, this phrase sounds a little bit awkward, or you've repeated the same word 5 times in one page. Try to fix that.
So what book are you reading at the moment? Are you reading one of your books or a book from another author?
I am actually reading 3 books now that I come to think of it, because I have 2 children and I'm always reading one book to each of them. And I'm also reading one to myself. So I Wish You Was, that's Wish You Was by Alexandra Page, which is a fun sort of Christmassy adventure. And to myself, I'm reading a historical nonfiction book, which is called The Light Ages by Seb Falk, about the Middle Ages.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant. What are you reading at the moment, Francesca, now you finished the Raven Heir?
I'm reading, so I've read 2 of these books already. It's by Serena Patel and they're Anisha books, and I've read 2 of them and I'm in the middle of my 3rd one. I'm really enjoying it.
That's a really strong recommendation if you're already in the 3rd one.
Yeah, it is. It must be. And that's what you were saying before. I think there's nothing better, is there, when you find maybe a character that you really love and buy into and care about, that there's nothing better than knowing that there's more books in the series, is there?
I love series books.
Yeah, me too. It's super fun.
And what kind of stories do you want to write, Frankie?
If I were to write a story when I grew up, I think I would want to write either a poem book or a mystery book.
Those are both great options.
I've always wanted to write one of them books because Anisha mystery books are kind of like mystery books, because there's always like a case to solve in them that Anisha always solves. She gets it wrong quite a few times, but she always solves it in the end.
That's fantastic.
Great. We look forward to those. Yeah. We look forward to that. Brilliant. Well, listen, well done. Well done. Thank you so much for joining us today, Steph. I really loved that event. We loved the Raven Heir here at Love Reading for Kids, and we're delighted that you could join Francesca and I for this event. So everyone, the Raven Heir, this is Stephanie Burgis. It's out now. Perfect adventure story for kids aged 9+. Go out and buy it. Frankie and I will concur that you will not be disappointed. Thank you for joining us. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.